Yeah, hello and welcome to this video. This is going to be released, I guess, on Christmas Eve, which is a bit unusual for a chess video to be released, but it's the last day that I have before I'm going to go travel to my tournament in Poland, in Caro-Kann. So it's about the only day I can do it, or it would have to wait like 2 weeks. So, and that I didn't want to do. So let's get going. I want to get you let's say, informed about my latest project that is going to be released on Chessable in early 2018. It is almost finished, let's say. I think the total completion is about 85 to 90% of the whole thing. I'm still writing on it, working on it, analyzing, but I have everything like together. I know what lines the book on Chessable will have. It's just some fine-tuning and some writing that will be finished in January, and then we will get it out as soon as possible to be released on Chessable and probably also other media formats. We'll see. I want to give you an overview what will be in the repertoire. It's an e4 repertoire, so let's put e4 on the board, and the title will be something like this: the 1e4 keep it simple repertoire. This is one of my favorite mottos in chess anyway. I think people tend to overcomplicate things. Doing simple things well in chess is a really good way of approaching it. So this repertoire features lines that are reasonably simple to learn, simple to understand, and ideally still successful, potentially successful weapons. In many cases, I'm going for lines that have a good theoretical reputation, but don't necessarily are the sharpest possible way of playing. In some cases, I'm going for something that is more like a little bit more technical maybe, or I'm going for lines where you have very low risk of losing, but have chances to press for more if the other side does something too ambitious or simply too loose. Let's have an overview of what I'm going to recommend in the repertoire. So 1e4, unlike d4, c4, knight f3 openings, with 1e4 things are very systematical. There are very little transpositions between the first move, so you need a weapon against e5, one against c5, one against c6, and so on, and they don't really interfere so much with one another. Let's go e5. I'm going to recommend to go knight f3, and I'm covering everything. I will give you something against even the crazy openings, the Latvian, the elephant gambit, like this, and everything. Everything will be in there, the whole e4 business. Still, what is the main thing here? It will be knight c6. That's going to be happening in the most often. So my recommendation is to play knight c3 in this position in order to go for the 4 knights, Scotch 4 knights. This line has a reputation of being extremely solid for white, which means it's tough to break down. The usual way of handling this is this variation, where black ultimately frees himself with d5, and after the capture and h3 followed by queen f3, there is a line on the board that has a very sound reputation for white. It's one of those very low risk ways of playing, and still exerting a little bit of pressure. The good thing about this opening is, and this is the same thing with many other lines that I'm going to recommend, it is strategically extremely sound. You have absolutely no pawn weakness. The pawns here are basically ideally placed. You have good open piece play. I will rarely recommend a line where you have a problem piece, where you have a space disadvantage, where you have to handle extremely difficult strategic situations. It will be sometimes simple, but it will always be good and easy to play. This is one of the virtues of this line. Yeah, very easy play. White will play queen to f3, bishop f4, develop quickly and try to exert some pressure on black's slightly weakened pawn structure. If you play this line, here the 4 knights Scotch, you have a ready-made answer to the Petrov by going knight c3. Here the move knight c6 is probably just the best move, and the only meaningful standalone thing, independent thing, would be bishop b4. But after the capture, white is slightly better. This is theoretically established basically forever. Nothing super special, but white gets the bishop pair and a more comfortable game. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone here, basically. You have a weapon against the Petrov and against knight c6. A good thing about having this here in your repertoire, this position, is that you can very easily at one point add the regular Scotch to your repertoire, after which knight f6 you would be able to play very solidly with knight c3, which is we have in your repertoire anyway, or you could take on c6 and play the sharp Mises variation. So my recommendation is something that could be easily used later as the base for like expanding the repertoire. This is what I recommend against e5. Note that everything else will also be there. Yeah, like I don't know, black playing g6 or here or d6 or whatnot. Yeah, I'm giving something against all those sidelines as well. So this is 1e5. The other main move, of course, is the Sicilian. Those two will comprise a lot of your games. Against Sicilian, I recommend to go knight f3. And I have a reasonably simple recipe there. Black will now, most of the time, play the moves d6, e6, or knight c6. These are by far the most common moves. And it's actually quite simple. If black goes knight c6, I'm recommending to play bishop b5, the so-called Rossolimo variation. If they go d6, again, I recommend bishop b5, in this case bishop b5 check. It's called the Moscow variation. And against any other move, basically, that does not attack e4, against knight f6, of course, we have to do something about this. But against other moves like a6 or g6 or e6, I'm going to recommend to play c3. So for example, e6, I'm recommending c3. The reason why I'm recommending c3 only here on move 3 and not on move 2 is that with the moves that black plays, like e6, g6, a6, he's always going to give up some options that are very viable against 2c3. For example, if you go 2c3, which is not a bad move in its own right, but black, for example, has many lines available that involve putting the bishop actively outside of the pawn chain here. And this is, of course, completely out of the picture after e6, c3. Also, a6, c3, you can argue that this is almost a loss of tempo. It's not like that easy, but yeah, c3 is generally believed to be best against a6 anyway. Another move would be g6, again, there's c3, what I'm recommending. So I like to build up the c3, d4 center, but under, let's say, using our own terms. They're not playing along and giving black all the options that are potentially okay. In the Moscow variation here, just to complete the picture, we will set up a Maroczy bind formation. Very much a good pawn formation with good chances for white to actually put some pressure on black. This is not just a simple equality. I think with those lines there has been a pretty substantial revaluation in recent years. Influenced by games by Magnus Carlsen and some other players. I think people take this more seriously now. That was believed to be somewhat drawish, but I don't think it is. You can just play for a win with this easily. In the Rosso Nemo, there are many complex lines. Most often black plays e6 and g6. In both cases, I don't recommend to capture on c6, but play with castles and just develop. Of course, you can take here, or after g6, you can take here. This is advised by many books, and it's not bad at all. But I wanted lines where I don't give up the bishop here all that easily. We have a more fluid development. I thought those are strategically easier to play. A lot of this is about taste and personal preference. Note that if you learn the lines that I'm suggesting here, you're not completely tied to a certain type of game. For example, if you play bishop b5 and after g6, you somehow think that, I'm recommending to play like this. Somehow you don't like this so much, you prefer to take on c6, then you're welcome to do so. This is a very respectable main line, and the advantage of playing main lines is that you have a variety of options. If you are stuck with some obscure line, you sometimes just have a very narrow path that is actually possible to walk in the first place. With a main line, you have all the options to vary your play. So against the Sicilian, I don't have the open Sicilian. This is an overkill. Yeah, do that in a keep it simple repertoire. And it's not necessary at all. White enjoys good chances for a small pull against with bishop b5 as well. It is actually, there are many people who think that this is actually better than d4. If you look at the Sveshnikov, for example, you know what I'm talking about. Here you probably have more chances to keep a long-term pressure on black. Yeah, this is the Sicilian. The next one is the Caro, against which I'm recommending the two knights variation. This has been a favorite line of mine for a long time. I mean, I'm not playing e4 that often, but I always thought that this line has some real credibility. One reason is that many players go bishop g4. That is a traditional main move, and after that we're either going to get the bishop pair on move 5. That is really early, and with the bishop pair we have an idea of what to play for. Yeah, convert the long-term advantage of the two bishops. I'm not saying that this is terrible for black, but you can certainly claim with precise play that white has a small advantage. And again, you know what your advantage is. It's not like some undefined struggle where you try little things. You know, okay, I've got the bishop pair. If we can open up the position, or if we can get a favorable pawn structure, the bishops will have their say. Some people go here, which is sharp, but probably not entirely correct. Yeah, after white takes, check. It's tactical stuff, but it's not great. So still played by many players. There's also a trap part of it. This is not a good line. After knight g3, bishop g6, and h4, black has some substantial problems to stay in the game. It's surprisingly awkward, this. Yeah, and there are some funny ideas here. For example, this is a recent trend, but queen e2 is actually an interesting move. I've had this played against me indeed, yeah. funny. The two knights is quite respectable, really, and played by many good players. Knight f6 is the modern trend, the most recent main move probably, after which e5, knight e4, knight e2 is my recommendation. I actually believe that black is probably equalizing there, or gets very close at least. But I think it's still, there's no reason to not playing this with white. It's an interesting position and a good way of fighting. The Caro is, I think, nicely met here with the two knights. Now probably my most controversial choice, and I really had some comments about this that were less not very friendly. Okay, the French defense. Yeah, against the French, I'm going to recommend to play the exchange variation. this is something that did not occur to me when I started the project, not at all. I started out intending to recommend the Tarrasch 92. The Tarrasch variation is of course a good line, and if you are looking for objective truth in chess, probably knight d2 or knight c3 will be the best moves there. However, there are some points that are really making e takes d5 quite interesting. After knight d2, black actually has the choice of line, and his choice of line will largely influence the upcoming game. If he takes on e4, or if he plays c5 or knight c6 or bishop e7 or knight f6 or whatever, he's got 8 or 9 moves. They will all be somewhat different, and black is the one choosing the line and choosing in some cases the pawn structure. It is actually difficult to learn because there are so many different setups. And then, while looking through the database, I was kind of unsatisfied with the Tarrasch because of that wide variety of lines. Then I suddenly recognized that the world champion Magnus Carlsen actually had played a number of games recently in the French exchange, mostly in rapid chess. And I felt it's always worth exploring what Magnus is doing. So I looked at it, and there were interesting ideas, in fact. It's not like they will completely change the chess world, those ideas, but they pose black some little problems. They really do, especially in the lines that I always felt are critical. I was never really doubting that, let's say, after knight f3, bishop g4, that white is better. I think this is also commonly known. Or c5, for example, is a bad move. There are many ways to play badly with black. Bishop d6, c4, I think white has reasonable chances for a slight advantage. This is also not a big surprise. The line that was mostly, at least for me, a critical one was simply the pure symmetry. Yeah, just black copies white. And this is the line that usually sees this huge drawing percentage. Yeah? Here what Carlsen is doing is he plays queen to e2 check, and this is surprisingly interesting. If black now plays the normal move, and I think this will be the main choice in over the board games, queen to e7, I think white already has some advantage, because after the capture here, let's say both captures are possible, of course. King takes, castles, and white is going to play rook e1 check, tempo, and he's got some easy tempos here. The white player b3, c4. This is just not equal. I understand the queens are off and it's symmetrical, but I mean, I've tried this in blitz chess, for example, and I've won almost all my games. It's just like white is a little bit better. There's no question about that. The same thing is actually with bishop takes, after which an early bishop f4 is harassing the c-pawn. And if you go c6 here with black and white castles, I mean, white is quicker here. Don't underestimate that. Yeah, you can easily run into a position that looks absolutely boring, but is in fact just a lot better for white. Like this position, for example. Yeah, if you just like, I'm going to double on the e file. What are you doing here with those pieces? This is awkward. It's not easy. Carlsen has won those positions very convincingly in rapid chess against very good grandmasters. So I completely understand if you say, oh, well, isn't that boring? Yeah, well, it depends. I think it's just a matter of choice. You can play a very complicated French middle game against many players. You will be the one understanding it worse because they have their closed French positions like this, or knight c3 and knight f6, e5 on the board all the time, and they will have an advantage usually in knowledge of structure. And with the capture, this is over. You're basically telling the guy, you're not going to get your closed maneuvering position. We're going to play an open game. Let's see how you do with that. And also don't underestimate, some people think after ed5 white is playing for a draw, and then the black players will not be as circumspect as they should be, or even better, be over ambitious. And if black is over ambitious here, he will be punished quite severely. There are some ambitious lines that simply don't work. So before you think, oh my god, this is terrible, have a look at the lines. I was surprised. I'm really not selling something stupid to you that I feel is bad. I would definitely play the exchange over the board. I wouldn't really mind it at all. It's maybe not a weapon that you want to use for the whole of your chess career. Maybe at some point you see, okay, let's play knight c3 instead on move 3 or knight d2. But the exchange is extremely solid. It will always be a useful thing to have in your repertoire. Sometimes a simple position is the better choice. And when I compared the positions that I analyzed, like out of the exchange, with some other positions that I had out of the Tarrasch or so, I really didn't feel it's a big difference. Especially in the context of a repertoire that wants to avoid huge chunks of theory. If you play one of the mainline Frenches with the idea in mind to not play every single theoretical move up to move 30, you won't have anything anyway. It's just what it is. So you can, I think, rather try to press a bit in the exchange than do it in some other lines. I'm really happy with my recommendation, even though I've gotten some flack already on forums and so on for doing this. Anyway, I think it's a good choice. Yeah, those are the big four openings that you will face most of the time. I can give you an idea what I do against the others. We have I have one chapter about d6, g6, these kind of things. Against the Pirz, I'm recommending to play like this. That's a very interesting line. White is supporting the center and securing against knight g4. And especially in case of a slow black build-up, and most of the time they play quite slowly, like this for example, we're going to push f4 and be very aggressive. This is, I think, a much improved version of the f4 lines of the Austrian attack that we also see often, where white pushes f4 on move 5. Here, black is committed to something lame with c6 already. h3 is actually very useful. Yeah, sometimes you can go here and you are very, very safe against knight g4 here, of course. I think this is a good setup, and I'm recommending this against basically anything with d6, g6. Yeah, no matter if they start with d6 or with g6, I always opt for this kind of setup, and I think it's just okay for white. In some cases it's better for white, a lot better even. If black knows everything inside out, he's maybe somewhat okay, but this is just what it is. Yeah? If they play perfectly, cannot do all that much. But I think excellent chances for an advantage. I will have one chapter on the Scandinavian that proved to be surprisingly difficult to tackle, actually. I was somewhat stunned that there are so many different variations that black can play, especially when you're here. They got queen f5, queen d6, queen d8, and these lines are fundamentally at times different. Some motifs are similar, but you have to really look at every single move in detail. I was surprised, but I think I found some good things. Black is simply not equalizing in the Scandinavian, and it's not very surprising. I mean, it's not a mainline opening, but it is not so easy for white. It's not like you can learn something in 2 minutes and be fine. I could one chapter about the rest, then stuff like the Alekhines, b6, knight c6, and so on. This sideline chapter is actually the chapter that is not yet written. I know what I'm going to recommend. I think the only one that is of some interest maybe for you to know is what I do against the Alekhines. I'm going to recommend the exchange variation. This is much easier to play than 4 knight f3. for a sideline. I don't know, playing a super main line is probably not the way to go. So I'm happy with this. And against like, yeah, the bad openings like b6 and so on, there are known refutations and or antidotes. I think I've covered everything, yeah? Or did I miss some opening? I don't think so. Again, I'm working on it. Most of it is completed. For example, the whole e4, e5 complex is completely written and ready to go. The Sicilian is like 90% completed. The Caro is completed. The French is 90% completed, and so on. There are some things missing, but nothing that will take ages to complete. We're talking about 1 or 2 weeks maybe. Yeah, and then this is ready to be released. I'm looking forward to it. Again, it's not completely clear where this is going to be released. It will be on Chessable, that's clear, but there will be maybe additional channels to release it. We will see. We're working on things. Yeah, I think this was a good way of introducing you to my project here on that's going to be released on Chessable, the E4 project. I also make this video for an additional thing that is related to Chessable. They have a new book out there, not by me, but some other authors, that I think is interesting for you to check out. I'm going to load the Chessable website. I hope that I did not really prepare this all that thoroughly. It just like let me log in and see. Yeah, this is the book. This is the book. Let me have a look. It is this one here. Can you see that actually? No, that doesn't help. It's 1001 chess exercises for beginners. So it's the first release about tactics really on Chessable. We go in there, we'll see that this is based on a real book, paper book by Franco Massetti and Roberto Messa. So what are we talking about here? This is 1001 chess puzzles, tactical puzzles, and it's aimed at people who are, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say for beginners. Maybe like when you're a little bit behind the beginner stage, a little bit better, then this could be a book for you and a Chessable product for you. They start with, I know, don't laugh at people, with made in one, and then it gets more complicated. It is actually a course in tactics. So it starts with all the motifs, and the difference is with this 1001 exercise positions compared to a tactics trainer, it is that these positions have been selected so that they cover all the motifs. So it's about learning all the motifs, not just about solving relatively random positions. So at the end of this course, it should be absolutely made sure that you have seen all the motifs. You will have seen tons of pins and skewers and discovered attacks and so on and so on. It's a really interesting way of doing it instead of doing it on a tactics trainer. If you look into this, how it works on Chessable, you have those chapters, and you can click on. You can also do the whole thing from the very first position to the last. And we can also go into certain things, and then with Learn Next, you get the positions. Yeah? They have the whole text. Yeah, I did skip that now. I shouldn't have done that. It was a little bit too much, or a little bit too quick, where they explain the concept of what a discovered check actually is. Yeah, think about the target group. It's not aimed at grandmasters. Yeah, okay, here you have to find e5, which is not so difficult, and we win the bishop and the game. So I should have solved that one. Next lesson, and you get the next position. Again, a discovered attack. Here the bishop is lined up on the king, so you find this, and you will actually win this and win the game here with the extra piece and important to the pawn on c3. So these were actually quite easy, but it gets more difficult. I mean, at the end of it, you get many positions that are tricky to solve, not just for beginners, but rather for more advanced players. One interesting point about this is, and this is something that I would like to look into a little bit more when I have time. I don't have much time because I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm on my train heading east in 9 hours exactly. So I don't have that much time. An interesting thing could be to use this set of tactics for the so-called woodpecker method. Yeah, the woodpecker, the animal. The woodpecker method was coined by the Grandmaster Hans Tikkanen, I think, and was introduced to me in the book Pump Up Your Rating by Axel Smith, where Tikkanen says that he improved a lot by solving relatively basic tactical problems over and over again. And maybe the set of problems here could be used there. That will be something for stronger players then. But I need to look at the positions more, and I also maybe need to read up on some things relating to the woodpecker method. Maybe you can Google it. There's some discussion on it in online forums, like on Reddit, for example. Maybe this is usable for this purpose. I'm not entirely sure. It's definitely a useful book if you want a basic tactics book and just want to go through all of them. If you go through those 1001 puzzles, you will definitely be a better tactical player. Especially when you are in that playing level range, let's say 14, 1500, these kind of ranges. Still, it can be useful for higher level players, I guess, if you maybe employ it in this woodpecker method. It's a really difficult word. I don't want to explain this method to you now. Just look it up if you're interested and know or have heard about it. Search Reddit, search the forums. So these are some news on what's going on Chessable and with my project. I hope you enjoyed this update, and I hope you will have good Christmas days and a good start into 2018. I'll be back in 2018 after I return from my tournament in Poland with new content on the channel. Definitely, and that's not an empty promise. I will do more stuff there. What exactly we're going to see. Again, thanks to all of you, and I'll be back next year. Bye bye.